There we go. Now we're live. So welcome. It looks like Angie and America's Escrow is all the rave because there's so many of you here. Or you just are passionate about understanding how to be better agents, right? That's what we're really about, right? We're passionate about being better agents and understanding the escrow process. So we do want to thank you for coming out and being live here in the actual office. We got a couple of agents that are viewing online. So we are recording this session as well. So it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel for your reference in the future. All right. We want to thank Angie. We want to thank America's Escrow for coming out today and taking some time out of their busy schedule over there to educate us a little bit more on the escrow process. So I want to ask a question. How many of us have never conducted a sale, never went through escrow? So see all the hands you got up, Angie? There we go. So some of us, we don't understand this process. So this is going to be a great class for you to be able to learn what takes place through this escrow process, how you, escrow, and the other agent are all working together to facilitate a sale. All right? Very good. So without further ado, Angie's got, I don't know, 15, 20 years in escrow now. She is just phenomenal. 25 years in escrow. She knows it inside and out. I thank her so much for coming out again today. Questions and answers, Q&A rather, will be at the end. All right, she's got a handout that you should have received already. And so without further ado, the wonderful, fabulous Angie Martinez.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me, first of all. It looks like a lot of you are really new. So I just basically wanted to go over who we are and what we do. And kind of break it down into as little information that you can absorb as possible. We did do a little handout, so we're going to kind of go through the definitions of what escrow is. Does anybody here who hasn't done a sale know what an escrow is? You guys know what escrow is? Okay, so what we are is we're a third neutral party, and we basically are the facilitator of the funds. That's an escrow account depositor. So we are neutral. So we work for both the buyers, sellers, the listing agents, the selling agents, mostly the lenders. So basically, escrow is a contractual agreement with us as a third party who receives and disperses the funds between the buyer and the seller and or lenders if they're involved. But we do a lot other than just dispersing funds. We're an instruction taker, so we basically can't tell you what to do. You have to instruct us what to do. So let's say you get an offer on one of your listings, or you're putting in an offer on a listing. Escrow has to be done. It's California law. You have to enter into an escrow. Sorry, guys, I'm a little bit nervous.
Don't be nervous at all.
Don't be nervous.
No.
So basically what you do is you would contact us because we're the escrow holder. And what we need to start an escrow basically is an executed RPA and an earnest money deposit. If you have a transaction coordinator like Rebecca, he can help walk you through how to open up the escrow. There's two types of escrow companies. There's an independent escrow, which who we are. We're independent and we're governed by the Department of Financial Innovative Protection. And then there's a broker-owned escrow. Those are governed by the Department of Real Estate. So they're a little bit different. Independent escrows have more guidelines, a lot more strict, whereas the broker owns are a little more lenient. I've always worked for an independent, or always run a broker owned as an independent. You always want to kind of keep your, I've worked for a title, independent and broker owned, and I've always kind of run everything as an independent escrow.
And so the independent escrow company is a separate corporation.
Yeah.
The other one, the DRE regulated, is a broker owned, meaning they can only do escrows for that company's agent. So independent means you do escrows for everybody and anybody, right? Not just equal preferred, but they're held to a much higher standard. And that's the big key, is that, Angie, with her years of experience, in order to be regulated under the state and under DFPI, It's a much higher standard. They get audited every single year, guaranteed. There's financial audits. Everything has to be to the T. And so when you're an in-house independent or a broker owned escrow, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit more lean back, more lax. They can't conduct business for you guys if they're not your broker owned escrow. Americans can. They do escrows for everybody.
We can
But
take
they're just a much
escrows,
higher
yeah.
standard.
And there's different types of escrows. There's resale escrows between, a standard sale, which is a buyer and a seller. There's REO escrows where it's real estate owned and bank owned. There's refinance escrows where a borrower is just taking out a loan. They already own the property and it's still, an escrow is still required in the state of California. So we do all types. I do mobile home escrows, same thing. It's real, what's not real property, but it's a sale transaction. So there's all different types of escrows.
Can I chime in one thing on that, you guys? The big takeaway on what is escrow is they are a neutral
Yeah.
third party handling money. So they're working for everybody,
Yeah.
not just for you, the selling agent, not just for you, the listing agent, they have to remain neutral through the whole transaction. So just keep that in mind that you're not going to necessarily, you're going to get great service with Americas and Angie, but you're not going to get preferential treatment
Right.
because they can't, because they have to treat you all the same. I just
Yeah.
wanted to turn that.
And you do want to have a good relationship with your escrow.
Yeah.
Because we can be your best friend. We can be your nightmare, but
Yeah.
we're basically neutral. I have a lot of relationships that I've created over the years that I've been working with for 20 plus years. So it's always nice to have a good relationship with your escrow officer. We all do it the same. We all have one job to do. Some of us do it a little bit different. Some of us do it a little bit better. Some of us don't do it quite as well, but it's good to have a good relationship with your escrow officer.
Can I add something? So one of the things that I want you all to know too is that they take direction from you guys. So that means addendums, contracts, counters. You don't just pick up the phone and say, hey, can you do this? They have to take direction from your forms. So when there's solar on the property and you didn't put it on the contract, that's why they're asking for an addendum. So they have to take direction from something. You can't just pick up the phone and willy-nilly, tell them to do something. Everybody has to be in agreement.
Yeah.
It has to get all signed.
And that's all in here, what
Mhm.
Becky's talking about, that Angie's gonna embellish on a little bit,
Yeah.
but Becky's absolutely right. They're instruction makers.
Yeah.
Right, so that, and
They
that's
can't just be,
neutral
"Hey,
between
we're changing
everybody.
the purchase price to 510, okay?
Or, hey, what do you think I should do? Should I give them a credit? No, you can't ask me that question. You guys have to negotiate between each agent. You guys have to negotiate. And once you come to an agreement, we have an instruction either via an addendum. We don't like requests for repairs, so don't send them to us. If there's a credit on there, that needs to be done through an addendum. But we take it all in writing and we prepare the instruction and then we credit debit accordingly. So I just basically want to go through some of the, highlight some of the areas that are most important when it comes to escrow. So I just want to make sure everybody knows what we are and what we do. And if you have any questions, we're gonna answer those at the end. Okay, so once you've got your executed contract, the best thing to do when you're opening escrow, like I said earlier, we need an earnest money deposit immediately. We're not an escrow without a deposit. If you have an offer and it's been accepted and you send it to me and it's sitting there for 4 or 5 days, it's not an open escrow. I have no deposit. So that's number one. Number two would be the more information you provide to us, the better. It is so important to send everything at once. We do have a seller form and a transaction sheet that I think we brought copies of.
We have some here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have
The more information, the better. We don't want to have to track you down, call you, email you. What's the seller's phone number? Where do they live? Is there an HOA? Is there solar? If you give it to us all up front, it's going to go so much smoother. Things are going to go and get done on time. And then I did list some of the items that are, like I said, most important, the information we need. HOA is very important. There's just, there's disclosure timeframes you guys have to perform. I believe it's 72 hours. They have to be ordered, HOA docs. If you send over a contract with no info and there's an HOA and we're trying to find out who you are or who it is or where you are so we can get the information, now you're out of contract because we don't have the information to be able to order it in a timely manner. And it's money deposit. Okay, so once we've got once you've opened escrow and we've got the signed contract, we've opened our title report, we're going to prepare our own instructions, and we have what's called joint escrow instructions. So basically, we're just reiterating, and we're joint to your contract. So all of your terms in your contract, we're just going to reiterate in our instructions because again, we are instruction takers. Those get packaged, typed, packaged, and sent out to everybody. Buyer has their own information package, seller has their own information package. These documents are extremely important that they get completed and returned to us as soon as possible because we can't do our job without the information. You have to understand we're working with lenders, title companies, so we have to supply information, but if we don't have it, we can't do that. So your buyers and sellers will always get a separate escrow package to complete.
In regards to escrow instruction, how much should we as agents not or should explain those instructions and help our clients with them?
Well, I mean, as much as you want, we're not allowed to advise or give advice on tax questions, just like you guys probably aren't either. There are tax forms in the seller's packages. But as much as you can, I mean, a lot of agents, they don't want to deal with it, so they'll just tell them to give us a call. But I mean, they're pretty standard documents. They're tax forms, disclosures, information sheets. We want to know who the new lender is, their insurance information. It's really helpful when the agents do know a little bit about the packages so that it also gives you guys an opportunity to be a little more hands-on with them. So, they feel a little bit more comfortable, but we always welcome the clients to come into our office or call us and we'll go over the paperwork because it is foreign. I mean, if you think about it, you get, sometimes you get paperwork and you're like, I mean, I look at paperwork all day and then sometimes I get my own paperwork in the mail and I don't know what it is. So it is very foreign and it's scary. People get a little scared when it comes to, their money and their property. So, but that does help.
With escrow instructions, do those, do copies of those go to the agent or we don't usually get those?
Yes.
Okay.
Good question. So once I've typed them and we've got everything in the deposit, I'm going to send you guys a draft with your commission instruction, copy of the title report, copy of the deposit, and a fully executed page 10 filled out by escrow, because that's required for your file.
Page 10 of the purchase.
Yeah, or page 11 if it's a manufactured or whatever contract you're using. You're going to get all of that. Copy of the NHD report. So those are all going to go out usually within 3 to 4 days of when we get the escrow opened. Once those have been reviewed, which most of you or most agents don't really reply. We just send out the package, or if there's an issue, they'll reply back, hey, so-and-so's name has a typo, or this is the day we're supposed to close, or, you guys get to review them before they go out. And you'll also have them for your file, because I think they're required for the file.
We put in an unsigned copy, so that draft will come out, and that's what you guys would be uploading into your system.
So also what's in that email, and it's really important, I don't work for a title company, I'm not a title expert, but you're going to get a copy of the preliminary title report. That is really important that you guys review that, whether you're representing the buyer or the seller, because that's going to tell you everything of public record that's going on that property. So let's say you took a listing and you're in escrow now and your seller has, I don't know, 2 child support judgments or an IRS lien that they didn't disclose to you. Well, that could just fumble your whole deal. If he's got $100,000 and now he needs this money to buy another, I mean, you just definitely look at your title reports They usually come in a hyperlink now, so you guys can access each document, so you can see what it is. We know what title reports are, and for the most part, we know what's on them, so we're always open to helping you review it, but definitely refer back to your title rep if you see something, you know, weird.
I'm gonna interject on that. So those of you who are brand new and you're building your team and you have your title reps that you've already met with, you need to talk to them to have them sit down with you and show you what they look for on a preliminary title report, because you should be ordering these for your listing. Like, you need to know what you're going into before you list the property, because what if they have all these things and it's going to affect the outcome of selling that property? If you know ahead of time, it's just like knowing about solar, knowing about all those things going into it, it's gonna be a much more smooth transaction if you know ahead of time. So talk to your title reps and see if they
Do a
can show you how to read it.
Get a preliminary report before you, or when you go on your listing, or when you get your listing. That's great for us, because when you open escrow, we've got all that information ahead of time, and we're not, you know, title companies are just as busy. So it's, you know, 4 to 5 days right now to get those title reports, and those are really, really important. So definitely make sure you're reviewing the documents that we send you, because it could turn your transaction, you know, a different way. Okay, so the preliminary report. NHD and home warranties. Escrow, America's Escrow does order NHD reports for you guys. I don't know if you know what the NHD report is and what it's used for. But it is ordered by us, and we will provide a copy to you guys. And we also send it out to the buyers and sellers for acknowledgement. That's about as far as we go with the NHD reports.
I just want to say, if you're on the listing side, you guys should all have your NHD reports at the listing, and you should be turning that in when you go to open escrow, because that is now our office requirement. And then even though she's getting it signed with their package, it is not their responsibility to have it signed by buyer, seller, and agent. That is your guys' responsibility, and making sure it's uploaded.
We do it as an accommodation.
Exactly.
And for the most part, we get it back and we send it to you for your file. And as far as the home warranties, I've never worked for an escrow company where we ordered them. I mean, that's a big liability for us. We don't know anything about the properties. So if you guys are offering a home warranty or you're asking for one, that's going to be a job for you guys. We'll pay the invoice through escrow, as long as it's sent to us and it's in the contract and it's negotiated who's paying. Question.
Oh, no. Are you looking at me?
Some of the other things, are you guys okay following along? Do you have any questions?
So far?
I know it's kind of going fast. Natural hazard disclosure.
Good question.
That's your environmental,
It's like in a fire zone, flood zone.
not my expertise,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's
Can
your
you do all
disclosure
that-
report for
that
all your
information?
zoning, yeah.
Required.
Yes.
Required on every file.
So just keep in mind, and we'll get to your question and say, just keep in mind, you guys, I mean, overall, the responsibility for you as an agent, whether it's a listing or a buy side, okay? When you get those escrow instructions, what you're reviewing, it's not like you have to know escrow. You just have to review what they put on those instructions, make sure it matches with what was agreed to in the RPA, the purchase contract, right? Because escrow's taking, like she said, they're taking that instruction and they're typing it into escrow instructions. They're taking instruction from the buyer and the seller, and they're putting it on their escrow instructions. So you got to review. Everybody makes mistakes. There's been times where, hey, we might get escrow instructions and they might miss a digit, or they might, misspell the client's name. That's what you're reviewing. You're just making sure that the information is exactly what it should be according to the contract, right? That's the most important part. The where she's talking about title reports and this and that. If you're brand new and you're like, what did I just get into? Don't worry. When you open escrow, or when you get your first client or your first contract, you're going to have people that are going to support you along the way. But it is our job to start getting familiar with these reports, right? So ask those questions. What is NHD? What is title? And I thought we've done a great job. We're setting up all these classes to try to keep them in line so you guys learn all this stuff as you go along. So you had a question, Joanne. Go ahead.
Well, I know there's a timeline as far as the NHD, so when you say you have to have it in when you open escrow, you need to just sign by the client, because then there's that time frame of, when they go out and.
You're talking about a timeline of the seller having to give disclosures out. If you're ordering an NHD report at your listing, that's one thing that you have now as a seller disclosure. All the seller disclosures should be sent out to the buyer's agent within the 7 days, as it says on the contract. If you guys change that to 3 days, 5 days, whatever it is, those are the timelines that you guys need to abide by. So that's the timeline of that. Like everything in the contract's gonna have a timeline. The EMD, the seller disclosures, the HOA docs, all of that stuff. So when you read the contract, you're gonna know what timeline you need to stay within.
Angie, I do notice that every time I do an addendum and I get it fully executed, that after that, you will do an amendment saying the same exact thing.
Great
Why
question.
is that?
Okay.
I've been all these years, I've never-
Great question. Okay. So like I said, the instructions are joint. So there's some things in the contract that I don't need to do my own instruction for. But when it comes to credits and debits, who's paying what, who's not paying what, we have to have an instruction on top of your instruction. So let's say you did an addendum for possession. I don't need to do it. The possession has nothing to do with what's going on in our escrow.
So
But it
only if
does
it's
to you.
pertaining to your escrow.
If it's like.
Well, if it's financial, it has to be amended as well, yes.
So if,
I was hoping somebody answered that.
if your possession
Or
has
pass that.
money, if your
Yeah.
possession has money, then she
Yes,
would
if
need to
it's a
know.
rent back,
Right, then
You
she
know,
would need to know when there's money
if
involved.
your SIP says, so many days, but then you change it and you do another addendum, I have to now do an addendum because I'm moving money. So I have to have that instruction of who's gonna pay it, how they're gonna pay it, so on and so
So
forth.
you're in
So,
compliance.
yeah, so that's why.
Have to classify you like SIT.
Yeah, seller possession, yeah. Yeah.
That's
These
another
forms
class.
will all start to click pretty soon, believe
But
me.
even on top of that, and I know it's down here further, a lot, what you guys should be thinking about as you're new and you create good habits for
Yeah.
yourself in a transaction. If escrow is supposed to close on November 3rd in your contract and in the escrow instructions, and there's been a hiccup with the loan and it's now not going to close until November 12th, you guys are technically out of contract unless you would get an extension of time
Yes.
that all people already signed, because most lenders are gonna require that. Because your contract says November 3rd, but you're now not closing until November 12th.
Yeah,
So that's something that she has to have so that she can provide it to the lender.
yeah, because now I've got to stay on course with your contract and your terms. So, and I can guarantee you most lenders, if you have a loan involved, if you're out of contract, they're gonna want that signed extension.
Our zip form stuff, we keep our files and it gets signed. When she does her amendments that matches ours, that's for their file. We don't have to have it fully executed because our addendum, our seller in possession, whatever we got, that's for us. She's doing hers for her file. So you don't have to have both in your file.
If you guys, for some of you who aren't familiar with an amendment, because we keep throwing that word around, amendment is an amended instruction. So I have my original instructions that I've prepared up front. Anything that changes from those instructions, we do in a form of an amendment to the escrow instructions. So just so you guys know what that means.
The change in.
Yeah,
your-
it's been amended, yeah. Addendum would be in addition to your contract, right?
Yes,
So.
we
our
have
amendment, yeah.
addendums, they have amendments.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so where was I at? All right. Home warranty. So yeah, the home warranty, we don't order. Credits, again, if you guys have any type of change in your original contract, we do require an addendum to the contract, and then we do then prepare our amended instruction. If it's on your original contract, when your offers, when you guys have your signed offer, then we incorporate that from the beginning. So it would be on your original instruction.
So an example of a credit could be you do an inspection, your buyer requests 10 items to be repaired, and the seller's like, well, I don't have time. I'm just gonna give you a $2,500 credit. He has to know.
Oh, yeah, that's very key. Anytime you're changing the terms of your transaction, don't forget, we're over here. We need to know because there's been plenty of times, more than a lot of times, where I'm getting, you know, information about a credit to the buyer or the seller's renting back, you know, a day before closing. So it kind of puts a big hiccup because they say, oh, I forgot. Huh? I mean, you got to tell us. We have to know everything. Once you open escrow, we're going to be your best friend from day one to the end. We're going to talk daily. I mean, it's just how it's going to be, you know, we're going to have to communicate. So that's very, very important that we know if there's anything changing in the terms of what you guys have already agreed to. We know that inspections, contingencies are all being removed. We know all that's going on behind the scenes. We don't have anything to do with that, but if there's any change in price, credit to the buyer, seller decided he needs to stay an extra couple days, whatever the case may be, we have to know right away. Even if it's not fully executed, give me a heads up. Hey, you're gonna get, you know, an addendum for a buyer credit. So, did you have a question?
Thank you. Okay. I have a comment and needs clarification. Whose responsibility is it to communicate to you those changes? Buyer's agent or seller's agent?
It depends. I mean, if you know that you're gonna ask for it as the buyer's agent, give us a heads up. I mean, I think if everybody communicated, it would all get done a lot smoother. Don't wait for somebody else to tell us. If you think you know that the seller, I'm gonna send an email requesting this.
Right.
Escrow, hey, FYI, you may be getting a $2,500 credit to the buyer for whatever. Give us a heads up, because then we can notate our file. Even if you send over an addendum half signed, at least I know it's coming. I can now notify the lender. The lender's aware that there's a credit now, and because with trend and everything, that might be that'd be another class. That's another class. With all of these guidelines, lending guidelines, you know, these things have to be, you know, the lenders need to know about these things ahead of time. So, but yeah, anybody in the transaction, sometimes the lenders will call me. Hey, there's, you know, or the CD will come over with the credit. And I'm like, where'd this come from? You know, so anybody can tell me who, you know.
CD, now she's talking, yeah.
Oh.
So anyway, usually the initiating party, whoever initiated that concept of like, hey, a credit or this or that. But all I'm gonna say for everybody that's new in the office, all you gotta do is keep in mind one thing. If when you're in escrow, when you have your first deal, congratulations, any changes that are gonna happen, you have to come talk to me or your manager or Rebecca or whoever, but you gotta come ask us, because when she's talking about that the lender gets notified and this and that, those are things that can mess up a deal, so to speak. So we're not gonna get into that today. So just make sure to come say, hey, is it okay if I do a $2,500 credit? Because that's a big number, right? So just make sure you come talk to us so we can advise you guys, okay, you don't want to do it this way, you want to do this and blah, blah, blah. Okay, just keep that in mind. Just write that note down. Like when I get my first deal, I gotta come talk to them.
And if you're on the buy side, you should be talking to your lender. You should be saying, hey, we might be getting a credit of this when you already have a credit, a seller credit on your purchase agreement. The lender needs to know that. And it's super important too, to know as soon as possible, because you don't want to be at loan docs. They signed and it's like, oh, by the way, they had, you know, $2,500 credit. We already signed loan docs. They're already drawn. So now what do you do?
And one of the biggest things that
hope and pray.
yeah.
You don't have to have a redraw.
Yes.
Right.
Because there's now a credit. So
And as a new agent, I mean, I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed that a new agent will think is not a big deal is you'll be thinking to yourself, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and give them $500 for my commission for that, blah, blah, blah. And you don't tell anybody. And then you just think it's gonna happen. And then, you know, hey, we're closing tomorrow. Oh, but I was gonna give them $500. You have to be vocal about this. So you gotta let us know so we can advise you guys and tell you, oh, by the way, you need to inform the escrow team, right? Okay, so just keep that in mind.
Yeah, but Becky is again, like you gotta have solid relationships with your lender.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that, when we talk a lot about building your teams, your lender is your team. So you have to have good communication with your lender. In the past, I've had situations where it was a lender I didn't know, couldn't get them on the phone, didn't know what to do, panic. You gotta build relationships with your lenders so that you can, especially the newbies, sit down with the lender and say, walk me through the process. What does it mean? What is a CD? Loan docs. Like, these are not familiar things to you guys. You guys need to sit with your lender and have them educate you on what all these things are, so that when you're in escrow and your buyer says, well, I got this, you're not going, you've got to know these things.
Yeah, and even if it's not your team, let's say, you're the buy side and you didn't get to choose,
Yeah,
make it a habit to be in communication with your closing team. We're all here to help each other. We're all here to get one job done. Whether you like it or not, because I get some agents that get very nasty because they didn't get to choose, and I get a rough transaction, but I just put a smile on and do my job and just get in the habit of communicating, whether it's an email, a phone call, but even if it's not your team. Okay, so as far as termite reports and clearance, that's again another negotiable item that's in the contract. Us as escrow, we're not responsible for what's in that report. We just know that we're going to get a report and we're going to get a clearance for the items listed to be repaired, if any, on that report.
Can you clarify something so that they understand? So I have a termite report. For whatever reason, the seller wanted to get it done at listing. I now get an offer. They're not asking for termite, but I'm still going to send it to you. I'm still sending you the termite, and I just assume you're going to read my mind and you're going to take care of it, but it's not on the contract. What should the agents do?
If you guys want a termite report for your buyer, or you've ordered one for your listing and it's not in the contract, I have to have an instruction to, one, accept it, and two, pay it from escrow. Or you're just going to give it to me because you just want to give it to me. I'm going to give it back because it's not in my contract. If you want to disclose it to the buyer, you're going to disclose it to the buyer outside of escrow. It's not in my contract. So if you give it to me and there's a large amount to be paid, I definitely have to do an amendment. And most likely the lender, if you disclose a termite report and there's work, now I've got it, there's an amendment that it's in our transaction, 99.9% of the time, the lender is going to require the work to be done. Section 1, and that's anything listed in section 1, which.
Yeah, so section 1 is on here. Section 1 is the work that needs to be done that's going to be required for a lender to do a loan on a property. So that would be the critical step. Section 2 are the proposed things that may need attention down the road. But so if the termite is part of the contract and there's section 1, and let's say section 1 is $3,000 that's all stuff that she has to know about.
Yeah. Or you decide that ABC termite company is ripping you off. So you're going to go to XYZ termite company, and then you're going to say, here, escrow, here's 2 reports. That's a no-no. Please don't do that. There's 2 different reports now, and one we have to do an instruction because you're handing us 2 reports. We've got to disclose 2 reports now. Who are we paying? Are we paying this guy for an inspection? Are we paying this guy for the work to be done, or this guy to paint? Like, 2 termite reports is not too uncommon, but don't surprise us at the end because, like I said, communication. If you know something's going to go on, let us know right away. Okay, so as far as the loan process during escrow, if your buyer is getting a loan, we're the lender's best friend. There's a lot of things that we have to supply for that loan to be approved aside from what the buyer needs to do to get it approved. They want to see multiple things, and usually it comes from us. Again, we're gonna provide title reports to the lenders. They want to see estimated fees and costs associated with the transaction. There's some other things that I don't want to confuse you with that they're going to ask for. But yeah, we're very critical when it comes to getting that loan processed and docs drawn on time to close. So that communication with them is real critical. We work with them a lot. And then as far as we did go over extensions of time, communication, definitely. You guys just basically need to come to us before you do anything, because we're kind of the glue that holds everything together. Whether you like it or not, we have to be there. So it's just good to have good relationships with your escrow, your team, your title, your lender. to make your transaction go as smooth and as fast as possible. Let's see. Any questions so far? Am I going too fast?
No,
No?
What is escrow?
I love it.
Yeah. Pop quiz. What is escrow?
About the termites, oftentimes that gets paid outside of escrow, so like the seller will just pay the termite company for the inspection and the repairs. But then you still want to show that in the escrow package?
If you guys are gonna incorporate a termite to be disclosed, like, yeah, we still have to do an instruction. Great, if they paid it, that's great, but we still have to do it.
Copies of the paid invoices.
Usually the termite company will submit an invoice saying
Okay.
paid.
Okay.
And then we don't have to pay anything, but we do disclose it.
Okay.
And for our file, if you had it done, even if it's not on the contract, because it was done, you have to disclose it to the other side.
Did you have a question?
What about for the inspection? Doesn't the buyer normally do that?
The home inspection?
Yeah.
We don't typically deal with the home inspections,
So
but
you've
I
never
believe
seen
the
that,
buyer
right?
has the right, yeah.
Buyer can be-
If they submit an invoice for us to pay through escrow, which has been done before, we can pay that. Absolutely. Another thing that is regarding invoices and things to be paid. A lot of times, and it doesn't usually happen with Century 21 because the TCs are paid typically, they're not submitting invoices. Anyway, sometimes agents will put on the contract the buyer to pay a TC fee or what, I don't know, you call it a broker buyer agent
Transaction
fee.
fee
Yeah.
or something.
Of whatever the amount is. That's great. Put it out there. If you want to charge your buyer or the TC is charging the buyer, that's great. But a lot of times what happens is they'll add it at the end. Oh, the buyer is a $350 transaction fee. Well, it's not on your contract. So communicate with your TCs too. If you guys have TCs and they're going to charge your clients directly, make sure it's disclosed up front because that is one thing that we cannot pay at the 11th hour. So your TC, you're going to have to pay it at the end. So just FYI, if it's an additional fee that's not listed already on your contract, disclose it. It has to be disclosed to the lender up front. Question, Rebecca?
Okay, so with the TCP, C21 will allow the TC fee to be paid from escrow. It has to be either a signed invoice of who's paying it. So if it was coming out of your commission, I'm gonna send it to you via DocuSign. You're gonna sign the commission, you're gonna sign the invoice, or you're gonna sign a CDA, a commission disbursement agreement. That is the only thing that C21 allows. So if you wanted to pay somebody else for whatever reason, we cannot do it that way. It has, escrow's only gonna cut 2 checks, one to Century 21 Preferred and one to the TC. That's it. In regards to C21.
As far as coming out of your commission.
Right. If you're gonna issue a credit, that's a credit that's, done on paper from buyer to seller on that side. But as far as checks go, it's gonna be just the TC fee and the.
Or a
C21.
credit from the commission. We would
Right.
do what's called an amended commission instruction, where we would show the credit that you're giving to your client.
Mhm.
It would come out of your check or the check at closing.
Right.
Automatically, because it's given to the buyer and then.
And
we
then
would
Carrie
have-
Ann does her little breakdown and you guys will see that. You'll see the breakdown of, here's what I got, here's what I owed, here's the credit I gave to my client, here's what I paid my TC, and then you have your net amount of your check. And it'll be all broken down, but it's just the TC fee would be, and it should be signed by both you and the broker, either Felipe or Amber, should be signing that.
I just have a note to add.
Okay.
It just happened to me in a closing. So let's say you're gonna pay your TC, you're gonna do an invoice, you're gonna have the broker, Felipe, go ahead and sign it on the TC fee. You have to also, if you're getting it e-signed, so if Felipe e-signs it, you have to send a certificate of completion that it was e-signed along with the invoice in order for escrow to pay. You can't just send in the invoice without, without the
That would be
certificate of
it.
completion.
That would
That's
be
an
it.
individual
Yeah.
escrow requirement.
That just happened to me and I saw.
I have one escrow that will not accept electronic signatures when they're trying to split up a broker check. they want the broker to sign wet signature. You can scan, fax it back to them, but they will not accept a electronic signature on a CDA. Now, if it was just a regular commission authorization, they're fine with the electronic signature, but the minute you're gonna split anything
Yeah.
from the broker's commission, they won't allow it. And it only happens every once in a
Yeah, that's
while.
a case by case, I
Yeah.
think.
Well,
It's not
it's
across the
next-
board.
Correct,
Yeah,
yeah.
that we don't require in our office. We don't require proof of.
I wanted to go back just really quick
Oh,
to
yeah.
Derek, to let me make sure you understood the home inspection part. So you understand that the buyer pays the home inspector, right?
Directly.
And he pays them directly. So there's some upfront costs that a buyer
Marquis.
has.
Marquis.
I'm sorry?
Did you say Derek?
Oh, I thought, sorry, Marquis. You have
Marquis.
your mask on. There's Derek back there.
Oh, yeah.
Marquis. Sorry. Yeah, you have to make sure that your buyer knows that if they're gonna do a home inspection, they're gonna have to pay that upfront,
Right.
as well as the appraisal with the lender. But then where escrow would need to know if there's any discussion about credits. Instead of doing the repairs, the seller is gonna credit the buyer instead of doing the repairs. That's when they would.
Oh, it would
know
be,
that.
I'm sorry, in lieu of. I should have
Yeah.
used that word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Request for repairs would be like a credit in lieu of repairs. So, yeah.
Going back to the TC fee, if you're having your client pay it, escrow does not see your listing agreement, so if
Right.
you send them an email saying, it was on the listing agreement,
Good
they
point.
don't
Thank
know
you.
that it was on the listing agreement. Or if you send them an email that says, it was in the MLS, they don't have access to the MLS. So just kind of keep that in mind, that you guys have to give them something, because if your seller is paying my TC fee, I'm gonna send her an invoice, and I'm gonna make sure that it's signed by the seller approving it, and then letting her know, hey, this is being paid by the seller, it was on the listing agreement, because she doesn't see the listing agreement. She only sees a purchase agreement.
Sometimes they'll send it to me if they know there's a TC fee, but it's not required to open escrow. Because, the transaction sheet gives us the information as far as the commission and all of that.
I have a question. You keep talking about a credit to the buyer. Is that like,
It's not every deal, it's
but like if
negotiated.
we want to give money back to the buyer, we can, or what is
As an
that for?
agent?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, credits are used for a lot of different reasons. Let's say there's a lot of repairs and the seller just says, I don't have time to do it. I'm just gonna give the buyer $3,000 and he can do it himself.
oh, okay.
Lenders don't want to see credit for repairs. They want to see credit for closing costs. So normally
So
when
we could
there's,
do that credit.
you
for
could,
closing
agents
costs,
do it, they do it, yeah. If you wanted to contribute a percentage of your commission towards your buyer's costs, that you can do.
Hmm,
It's coming from your commission,
Yeah.
right.
from
Most
your portion.
lenders, yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
you tell somebody like, I'll help you out with closing costs.
Most
we
lenders
can-
are okay with that. Obviously, you don't want to get, the buyer doesn't want to get too many credits because there's guidelines as far as down payment and things that they
There's a
have.
max.
They have to
Yeah.
come in with a certain amount of money.
Mhm.
So, I mean, but yeah, you can do that. And then as far as, the closing process, I hope I'm not going too fast for you guys.
Nope.
When you're in escrow and everything's been sent out, buyers have got their paperwork out, sellers have returned, everybody's ready to go. Now you've done your inspections, the appraisal's done, everything's golden. Now your lender comes in and he sends the documents, the loan documents. That's the buyer's required to sign those, always has to be notarized. And we coordinate usually all of that. The lenders work with us. Like I said earlier, we provide the information they need to get to that stage. Once the loan documents are in escrow or in my office, in my email, I will typically reach out to the buyer, usually within the hour, to coordinate meeting with the notary or coming to our office to sign those. They do have to be notarized. And they're probably anywhere from 60 to 150 pages. All sorts of, some lenders send different things, but for the most part, they're pretty boilerplate as far as what's contained in the documents. Once the documents are signed, we send them back to the lender via email, FedEx, and usually funding that loan, meaning the loan funds are sent, is usually done within 24 to 48 hours. Nowadays, it's usually what we call a table funding, meaning we scan and email. Documents aren't required in their hands to fund their loan. Lenders, they're all different. There's some that we love and there's some that we hate because they're just all different. But for the most part, it's if you've got everything together, your file's in order, your credits are all done, your documents are signed, it's usually pretty smooth for us as long as everybody's communicating and we're on the same page. So
Can you explain to them, when, let's say they're on the listing side, right? And the buyer's agent says, okay, my buyer sent their funds in. A lot of new agents don't understand that it's not just the buyer sending in the money and now, okay, we're ready to
Right.
fund. There's like, money's gotta go
Yeah.
from here to there. Can you explain that?
okay,
to
so
them?
now at this point, you've got your $5,000 deposit from your buyer in escrow. Now your loan is getting ready to fund. The buyer may have to bring in another $100,000. That's their down payment. Buyers closing funds being sent into escrow usually happens when the docs come in. I'm usually going to call, or I'm usually going to email agents. Hey, escrow's got loan docs. We're looking good for closing. So such and such a date. Buyers are signing this date, whatever. Docs come back, I process it. And between that email and time I receive the signed loan package back, I should have buyers closing funds wired in. So at that point, we're going to reach out to the buyer, let them know that their balance due, they got to get that money in. Just because their closing funds are in does not necessarily mean we're ready to close. The lender's got to review the documents, approve the loan funding, send their wire out. And at that point, we're going to be down to the recording
Wait,
process.
so if the loan funds, I can't give the keys to my client?
No.
Yeah,
Loan funding,
yes, it is, it is.
recordation or confirmation is when the county stamps that grant deed. The grant deed is the document the seller signs to transfer the property to the buyer. That gets scanned in by the county or the title company. Once they have lender funds, once escrow instructs them to close, they stamp and record the documents. That could take anywhere from 30 minutes to 9 hours, depending on the time of the month. So if we
Or
have
the
a
next
closing,
day.
or the next day.
Yeah,
So if I have a closing this morning, my loan funded, my buyer's money's in, I'm ready to go. It could be 8 o'clock before you get an email from
Yes.
me,
yes,
which means you cannot, well, I'm not an agent, but you cannot give the keys
correct.
to the other agent until you hear from escrow that we've closed, or your title.
And sometimes the buyers are in their moving van,
Yeah.
sitting on the street,
Oh my
waiting for that
Yeah.
call.
And I think
to
as
confirm.
a buyer's agent, if you guys know this,
Yeah,
going in and you instruct your
Yeah.
buyers, hey, we can record today, but that doesn't mean you're gonna get your keys right at 5 o'clock
Yeah.
or whatever, because I've seen recordings come super late, or maybe we fund today, but we're not recording until tomorrow.
Right.
That's a whole day that your client has to wait. Until they say you're recorded, you are not to give those
Yeah.
keys.
Or if it's on a Friday, it could go till Monday,
No,
right? Or no?
absolutely not.
Oh, it won't.
No, if we
Okay.
record on a Friday,
Yeah,
depending on the county, okay,
Uh-huh.
but I think most of you all do your business here in Riverside or San Bernardino. Los Angeles County and I believe Solano County are the only
don't
counties
do
in the
same
state
day.
that do not do same day recordings, meaning you can't fund a loan and close a loan in the same day. So if you, no, I lost my train of thought. So basically Friday, if you
Yeah.
fund your loan in the morning for your buyer, it's gonna be released for a recording for that day. We just may not have confirmation until after 5 PM.
okay.
But
So you
I
need
know
to
I
tell
work until my recordings are confirmed. So I have access
Okay.
to my email all the time. So as a matter of fact, I had one yesterday that actually came in before 5 o'clock. So that was nice. But sometimes they come in at 7 and 8 o'clock at night.
Oh, okay.
So you just, until you hear confirmed.
Yeah,
That's
be
a word
patient.
you
Yeah,
want to keep in your head, confirmed, recorded. So, so that's basically the end of your, and that's my favorite part of the transaction.
Don't forget, that doesn't mean you're
Right,
okay.
so,
Right.
yeah, my favorite part is when the buyers call or they come in and they're just overjoyed with like gratitude and they're just so thankful that this was, their dream. And that's why I love doing what I do. Aside from meeting, amazing people and working with amazing people. But yeah, as far as getting paid, typically, the way I've always done it, and the way I've seen it, it's usually 24 hours. Unless you have a morning closing. If your file closes at 8 o'clock and we get confirmation by 10 a.m., the chances you're gonna get a commission check that day are probably about 90%.
Well, the brokerage.
The
Right,
brokerage,
yeah, no,
the commission, the file will be dispersed.
right. That doesn't mean you get your check.
Yeah.
So when they say your file's recorded, you need to allow them to close out their
Yeah.
file. They're gonna
24
package it
hours.
all up. They gotta do their final closing statement. They're gonna do all their checks. Then they have to send them out to the broker. So that means Carrie Ann would get it, right? If it's an outside escrow, it could be snail mail, it could be overnight, right? Once Carrie Ann gets that check, that's when she's gonna process your commission check,
Mhm.
okay? So don't think that when she sends that email out saying reported, that you can just come and pick up your
Yes,
check.
yeah.
Because as an office, we have requirements as well. Your file has to be complete, it has to be reviewed, she processes the check, she does her little balancing of whatever, and then she will let you guys know once your check is ready. So just keep in mind, it could be 24 hours from the time that she receives it. And if your file is not complete, it could be longer. So you always want to stay on top of everything. As a broker, we have to have our file complete.
I have a question.
Sure,
Donna and I just closed an escrow on Tuesday, an outside escrow.
congrats.
And the escrow company sent the disbursement, the check, snail mail. Literally, overnighted, did not give me a tracking number, did not do any of that. Is that allowed?
Yeah.
for
We
an
can
escrow
send it any way
company
we
to send
want.
Snail mail, I've always gotten a tracking number where they've overnighted it, but they can just throw it in regular mail without any tracking or anything then, right? That's
It's
allowed?
allowed, yeah, a good escrow company would do that.
I don't think they have customer service skills because
Right.
I want your business as a buyer's agent. Managing your
Goes
money,
out the-
absolutely, yeah. I mean, just everyone
Well,
want,
and not only just getting your money, but what if it gets lost in the mail and then you gotta go back to the escrow company and
And
get
they
your
don't
payment,
care.
yeah.
reset and all that other stuff.
and that happens.
It's about that little stamp, that 55 cents or whatever it is now. I
59,
have, what is it?
59, I think.
Oh my goodness. So I have one escrow right now, and I can't remember the name of them. But they put on their commission instructions, regular US mail, or $25 will come out of your commission if you want it overnight.
Wow.
Or, there's a wire, and it's like, I don't know, $30. But they're taking that from your commission. So they're almost forcing you to choose snail mail, yeah.
That's not good customer service.
Yes.
Yeah, so just so
Not
you
good
know,
customer
like,
service
the
at all.
Americans, how we do it here is that I
I have
email
delivered.
the escrow officers in the morning, are we gonna have any checks? At 3 o'clock or so, we go pick up the checks and we bring them over here for Carrie Ann to process.
Yep.
So we try to make it as quick and streamlined for you guys, because we know how important it is for you to get paid quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the ultimate goal, you know?
But that's not the norm, I've worked for several escrow companies, that's not the norm, but some companies will deliver like that too, but we try to keep it where I pick up in the afternoon and they're here for Carrie Ann.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's basically, in an hour's, what we do. I mean, there's a lot more, it's a little more complex as to what we do, who we are. And I'm definitely open for you guys. If you ever have any questions, give us a call at the office. There's, 4 of us in there with over, I don't know, 70 years experience together. We're here to help, definitely. And like I said, escrow, you want to, and don't be afraid to say, this is my first deal. Like, I get that all the time. Great, I'm gonna mold her. No. I'm gonna get her to where I need her. No, but yeah, don't be afraid to say, this is my first deal. I need help. I get it all the time. I'm not an agent. I can't tell you what forms you got to do and all that, but I definitely will walk you through the process for you and your client as best as we can. So.
Can I add a couple of things in close? So for the newer agents, if you're going on a listing appointment and you haven't yet done a net sheet, I know Felipe likes you all to know how to do the seller's net sheet. That's showing the seller everything that they're gonna have to pay and what their net
Yeah,
proceeds will
what they're gonna
be.
get.
You can call Angie or Iris
Mhm.
and you can ask for them to prepare a seller's net sheet for your listing appointment. But don't do it an hour before,
Yeah.
like give them time to do it, you know.
I
even like if
haven't
you-
done within 2 hours, more so an hour. Lately, it's been a little more than like 2 hours, but we like to get them out within an hour
The
to
best
2 hours.
practice is
Yeah.
if you know you have an appointment on Friday and it's Wednesday, email the officer and say, I have an appointment on Friday, can you do it? And give them what they need for that.
And there's, you guys have forms for
Yeah.
those, right?
Yeah.
I believe there's a form you can fill out that gives us the information, you know, what the price is gonna be. Do they owe any money on their property? Are we paying a termite? Are we paying a home warranty? Is there an HOA? Is there a solar? That form's gonna give you all those questions to answer so that when I get your request, we can do it. We don't have to go back and forth. What's the price? What's this? What's that? What's the commission?
Yeah.
Number one, what's the commission?
Yeah.
So there's
And
a form
then-
you can send it to request the net sheet.
Yeah, so that's good for you as new, if you're going on your first listing appointment, that's a tool that, you know, they can help you with. And then I just want to piggyback on, so an escrow officer seriously has so many hats. It's kind of funny, but seriously, they are a therapist, they're a counselor, they're a teacher, they're
Punching bag.
sometimes they're the counselor, they're a punching bag. They are
Best
a
friends.
firefighter because they're helping put out fires. They are wearing so many hats. So the communication, we can't stress enough how important the communication is.
Oh, we're private investigators. too.
Private investigators.
That's another one. I'm
Yeah.
really good at finding things, so.
So all the different hats that they wear, so just know that that's all that they're doing on your file. They're also doing that on a lot of files. And, you know, we take pride in that we're always answering the phone and we're getting back to you guys right away, but sometimes they can't respond to you right away just because they may be putting out the fire on Shays and they gotta deal with that first and then they're gonna get back to you. Just know that they're not responding to you, but they are doing so many things and there's so many moving parts. It's so important that you build a relationship with your escrow officer because of that.
Yeah.
Like, get to know your escrow officer and she gets to know you and how you like things done.
Can I just add a few things? Some of the stuff that I see when I'm TCing a new file with the new agent is, you guys want to call escrow and you want to get an answer right away. Escrow has cutoff times for fundings, so morning times are funding times. So if it's a question of, can I get a net sheet? There's a form, you can fill it out, you can email them the question. You don't need that answer right that very second. Be patient. A lot of times newer agents, they get so excited and they're overwhelmed and they want somebody to pick up the phone right then and give them the answer. During the mornings, they have their funding times. It's really important because when you get that
When it's your funding day, you're gonna want
gonna
us to
make sure
focus
she's
on your.
working on that funding. Regarding the escrow packages, our escrow doesn't do this. There are some escrows out there that will send an email to you guys and you're thinking that it is the broker escrow package when really escrow said in there somewhere really tiny, send this to your client, have them print out these 20+ pages. Our escrow does not do that. They get all that information up front. They make sure that it goes out to your client, whether it's the buyer or the seller. But keep that in mind that is something that escrow should be doing. Your people are probably packing. Maybe they don't have a printer.
Yeah.
You know, they can't print stuff. So it's really important that communication of where to send your seller's paperwork to, following up on making sure that your seller or your buyer is turning in this paperwork in a timely manner, because that can hold up the steps that escrow has to follow or the lender has to follow. EMD, a lot of times you guys say, oh, well, you know, day one was on Tuesday because that's when escrow opened. No. You guys, your acceptance date, day 0, day 1 is the next day after acceptance. It clearly states that in the contract, how to read those days. A lot of newer agents say, oh, well, they might try to call, or mostly get the calls saying, they got the close date wrong because we just opened escrow on this day. No, the close date's right. And you calculate it from, this day, not when the escrow opens. I get a lot of that for new agents. And also the last thing is, you get a counter, it's fully executed, but all the pages of the RPA are not. You send escrow
That's
a
not an open
counter,
escrow,
that
just
is
so you know.
not a fully executed contract.
Yeah.
I know you guys get excited, you want that escrow number, and you're ready to just hurry up and send her everything because you want to call that buyer's agent and say, hey, we just opened escrow. Well, you really didn't, because your contract is not fully executed. So if you have counters, any addendums that were tied to a counter, all the pages of the RPA from the agency disclosure to the consumer one, all of it has to be fully executed. So that was my last thing. Those are the things I see the most
And
from new
definitely,
agents.
definitely read your emails. Not that, I don't want to say that in a bad way, but we all do it. We all get busy and we skim through it and sometimes we put things in our emails and then the agent responds and it's, well, did you just not read what I sent? So we're giving you the information. Just make sure that you're reading it and responding if needed. But I think that's about sums it up. Thank you for your
You
input,
did a great
Rebecca.
job.
Thanks, Rebecca. You guys. If you have any questions, good luck to you guys. And we're here if you need us, okay?
Thank you.
Something that I want to bring to your attention in regards to EMD, because escrow is again handling, of course, all of these funds. One time happened to me, and so just so that it doesn't happen to you, that escrow sent me the instructions for the EMD, and then they wanted me to send it to my buyer. Okay, don't ever touch anything regarding EMD as an agent. Okay, escrow should be handling that, because if that money gets lost, the last thing you want someone is calling you because of something that you did. Okay, and they do a great job over here at America's. It says right there in the instructions, give us a call. We want to talk to you about this. So we can get that squared away so that that money doesn't get.
Can I reiterate?
Mhm.
We will never send you wire instruction. It's now our company policy. We're not sending it to the realtors. The only person getting wire instructions when an escrow is opened, by the way, the EMD is typically wired, is the buyer. I get agents all the time saying, CC me on the email to the buyer. No, I'm sorry, you're not getting that. Fraud it's taken very seriously. It's already happened to me twice in the last 10 years. You guys are susceptible to those hackers out there because of the work you do. We all are, but we will never send it to you. So just FYI, don't ask for them. They're not.
Question? Great question. Yes, earnest money deposit, that's going to be their percentage that they're going to put in for the purchase price. Right, it's part of their down payment. Any other questions? She's gone. She's walked out. She's closed the door, shutting it down. All right. Thank you guys so much for attending. We still got some fruits and bagels up here, some juice. Go ahead and grab that. Those of you watching online, we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.